Hi, everyone. Welcome to the monthly educational forum presented by EvergreenHealth. I'm Emma Geary. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist here at NAMI Eastside. And I am so grateful to have our guest this evening for June, since it is Pride Month. Happy Pride. We wanted to put a spotlight on the LGBTQ plus IA group and folks to share about their connection to mental health. So, with us tonight at the Evergreen Health Forum, I have James Webster from Pride Across the Bridge. And with that, I will let James continue their introduction. Thanks for being here, James.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is James Webster. My pronouns are he, they. I am the chair of Pride Across the Bridge, a local nonprofit located in Redmond, Washington, dedicated to bringing out the resources for the 2S LGBTQIA plus community here on the east side, east of Seattle. I don't know where people are necessarily watching this from. Um, we have often been told that if we need healthcare or community or resources or anything at all, we have to go to Seattle. And the truth of the matter is that the queer community is everywhere, and so we are dedicated to bringing them out and bringing them together here on the East Side. Um, we, as a nonprofit, put on a lot of big events, or a couple big events, a lot of medium events, and a ton of small events. Our biggest event is Redmond Pride, which is coming up at the end of August. We also have a swim meetup coming up soon, and a queer comedy show that's going to be hosted in Kirkland. Sorry, can you hear my cat bemoaning? Okay, good. That's just for me then. Um, my name is James. I'm the chair. Uh, I am here to talk today about mental health and the queer community, um, particularly as it applies with stigma and the overlap that I've seen between the queer community and especially neurodivergent people. Some personal history about me. I am 32, so take anything I say with a grain of salt. Um, but I grew up in a very conservative household. I was homeschooled until sixth grade, which I think is like 13 or 14 years old. Um, and I had a tough time with that. Growing up, I was told that things like ADHD and autism, those were newfangled inventions that weren't actually real. And I was also taught that, especially in church, that you should always present the best face forward, and that the presentation that you make for yourself and for your family is very important. So we're always happy, we're always smiling, and nothing is ever wrong. So I learned from a very young age how to mask my undiagnosed ADHD and my depression and my generalized anxiety and my little sprinkle of autism. Um, I had a very hard time personally for much of my life, for the majority of my life until I got my diagnosis, I think about 26, 27. Um, I really did not like myself. I don't want to be too crude or crass in this, but my internal monologue, I was very cruel to myself because I was not performing the way that I was told people should. And the common factor in all of that, I had to assume, was me. Sweet. Um, so I had a very hard time being kind to myself or even liking myself. When I was diagnosed with ADHD at 27 or 20, 26 or 27, it really opened up a lot of things for me, and it allowed me to have the vocabulary and the ability to be kind to myself, to understand that I am not fundamentally wrong or broken or sinful or bad, and that the issues that I had were not unique to me and not permanent, not unaddressable. Uh, I had a hard time with that. But getting that diagnosis helped me immensely be kinder and more honest with myself. Um, Neurodivergence and mental health in general has been a huge part of my life throughout all of it. And a lot of it has been very negative. And a lot of that I attribute to not having the support or the understanding uh, to speak about and address it openly and honestly, not even with other people, but just with myself. The ability to look in the mirror and say, I have ADHD. I'm not broken. I'm not bad. I just have spicy soup for a brain. Um, is something that's relatively new in my life, but has changed it dramatically. Um, I I'm here today to talk about neurodivergence, but I'm also here to talk today about queerness and about the 2S LGBTQI plus community, and specifically the overlap between neurodivergence or mental health and queerness, because there's a huge overlap. The Venn diagram is almost a circle. Um, and I'm sorry, my cat is just being very needy. I love you, Mama. You have to stop. Um, the Venn diagram is almost a circle between neurodivergence and queerness. And I believe that a huge reason for that is to be neurodivergent, to be aware, to have the vocabulary uh, to understand and self-reflect on I have ADHD or I have autism or bipolar disorder or whatever it may be, whatever your mental health state may be, the ability to look at that and acknowledge it and self-reflect and accept it is a very it's rare and it's difficult. And it walks hand in hand with the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I've been told that society says there's a standard for how people are, and I am finding myself falling outside of that. It walks hand in hand with the ability to look in the mirror and say, I'm attracted to people of the same gender, or I would prefer to present myself as someone of the opposite gender. The ability to openly and honestly with yourself before anyone else acknowledge that you are a member of the queer community is very difficult. It's very difficult um, for varying degrees, not as much for some people, much more for other people, but depending on where you are in life and the support you have, um, the ability to say, regardless of what my parents think, regardless of what my community may think, I know this about myself to be true, is a very daunting thing to do. And it walks hand in hand with neurodivergence, because if you're able to look at yourself and say and accept things about you that are true, they're indelibly true, then it becomes so much easier to then look at the other aspects of your life and say, well, what else about me is true? When you can accept I have ADHD, I'm not broken, you can also then look at yourself and go, well, I've never quite felt like I was the right gender either, but that was just in the big bucket of things that we had to push down because that wasn't a church acceptable topic. Um, Being homeschooled for me, I think, helped in some ways. When I entered public education, I mathematically I was very far behind. I didn't have a fundamental concept of what multiplication or division were, are. But I got to sixth grade reading at a ninth grade level because I had undiagnosed ADHD and I was home alone for most of the time because I didn't go to school. I was at home or I was at church or at the store, and that was where I lived. Um, the Sorry, collecting my thoughts here. Being undiagnosed neurodivergent as a child, I was cripplingly understimulated And so I sought out stimulation wherever I could get it. And a lot of times that ended up in my own head. The ability to imagine things that are not is, I think, very important to make them so. Uh, you can't change something if you can't picture what you're trying to change it into, I think. Um, so being homeschooled gave me a lot of time to self-reflect and to think about myself in very critical ways. And I think it laid the groundwork for once I had the vocabulary to be able to accept myself. Um, but it was also very, very painful because there is a lot of pain that comes with mental health issues, especially undiagnosed mental health issues, that you are actively encouraged to hide. Um, Mental health and queerness, there's such a stigma about them. Uh, in many parts of the country, I have relatives for whom you don't go to therapy because therapy means you're admitting that something's wrong. So you can't go to therapy because that's an admission of guilt, and which is not the case. But that stigma, I think, traps people in these cycles that are incredibly harmful. And I think ultimately kind of leads to a dichotomy because the overlap between queerness and neurodivergence is a circle. If you can accept one, you can accept the other. And it is, I think, a very rare and unique individual who is able to self-reflect and then at the end of it go, nope, I'm perfectly 100% happy in my gender, straight as an arrow, uh, no neurodivergence. I'm just 100%. I am the normal person everyone thinks that they are. And frankly, I think it's a myth. I think they're a mythical beast. Uh, but the number of people who talk about their state of, who vehemently deny being anything even remotely queer or anything even remotely neurodivergent or have mental health issues because of the fear of the stigma that comes with it is terrifying and astounding at the same time to me. Um, I have heard so many older men talk about, well, of course I am envious of women and would like to be one. Everyone wants to be a woman. I mean, they're beautiful and they get to wear nice dresses and they're soft and they smell nice. And I'm like, not everyone wants to be a woman. That's kind of you're kind of outing yourself with that, which is very sad to me because there's a possibility that if you'd been able to accept yourself on that, then maybe you could have transitioned earlier in life. You could have been happier. If that's what everyone wants that, well, you could have had that. But the stigma in society, I think, is what pushes this Venn diagram into a circle because I don't think anyone is neurotypical or 100% straight cisgender because gender and sexuality is a spectrum and neurodivergence is a spectrum. My ADHD doesn't look like everyone's ADHD and my autism doesn't look like everyone's autism. It falls within spectrums of reality and understanding. But because there is such stigma against queerness and against neurodivergence and mental health in general and against having any conversations about either, the reason that the Venn diagram is a circle is not because queerness means that you're neurodivergent or because you're neurodivergent it means you're going to be queer. I think it's because if you can accept one about yourself, you can accept the other. And if you can't accept one about yourself, then you can't accept the other as well. And the people who say, oh, ADHD, that's just something they made up. autism's not real. That's something they made up. And I love history. I'm a huge history buff, and the idea that autism is not real, or that it's a brand new phenomenon is very silly to me. There's a English author in the 14th century, I believe, who wrote 8 volumes on ferns, the plant. 8 full volumes detailing all the different types of ferns that they knew about. And that's hyperfixation. That's a specialized interest. That's a very ADHD and autistic behavior to just write 8 full books about ferns. We've always been here. Not, and when I say we, I mean both the queer community and the neurodivergent community. We have all always been here. Um, we're not new, but the key thing that I think marks us out as why there is such an overlap is because we are able to accept ourselves, which is very hard. It's a very hard thing to accept oneself at all. It's very hard to look within, and to critically analyze yourself. Um, yeah, so there is significant overlap between neurodivergence and queerness. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. Um, Looking up at my notes here. My my worry, my big worry for a lot of people, especially in today's extraordinarily turbulent political climate that is so predicated on the idea that everything is fine. Everything's fine all the time. Everything's going 100% according to plan. We can't admit any fault or wrongdoing. We can't introspect at all. My great fear is we already are so underfunded across the board. We are underfunded for mental health services across the board. We stigmatize people with depression, with anxiety, with autism, with ADHD, with bipolar disorder, with schizophrenia. We've There are so many people in this country and around the world who have incredible gifts to give, who have brains that are beautiful and are capable of doing and being incredible things, but they don't fit into this box that has been presented to us as the one true way to be. And so because of that, we're collectively thrown under the bus. And it's incredibly sad because some of the most incredible artists I've ever met uh, are people who fall into neurodivergence and the queer community. And I don't know anyone who's had a great 100% good time, who's had it all: supportive parents, supportive community, supportive country, supportive healthcare systems and schooling. And we try to push people through a mold. And when they come out in a shape that we have societally deemed is inappropriate, we just kind of throw them away, which is such a shame. I am very limited sometimes by my ADHD. I'm limited by executive dysfunction. That's something that I struggle with. I struggle with disassociation. I struggle with disassociation right now. Sometimes I look at a wall and I just want to, and then I have to really pull myself back to it. Um, there are a lot of parts about my ADHD that I still, even with the language and terminology, I struggle with, and I struggle to accept and incorporate into myself in a kind way. A lot of my old habits will still creep back, but I know that I'm capable of doing incredible things. my neurodivergence and my queerness, and one of my big contributions to Pride Across the Bridge is I do Dungeons and Dragons. I currently DM four separate groups on a biweekly basis, and I the Venn diagram of queerness, neurodivergence, and Dungeons and Dragons, I think, is also a circle. um, the I think that D&D or TTRPGs in general are very important because they incorporate a lot of things that we are not taught how to do in life. Things like having fun, which is so important. It is so important to engage in joy um, in general, and for, especially in these times. Having fun is so important. Being able to be in a supportive community where you can discuss things and try things and make mistakes and engage with each other and have some control over your narrative. D&D ultimately is collaborative storytelling, and there's a lot of very therapeutic aspects to it. Um, my ADHD and my autism and my homeschooling and my lifetime's experience in theater primed me to play D&D. And I think I do it very well. And I've been told that I do it very well. And sometimes it's hard to believe other people because my brain is spicy and full of bees. Um, but it's something that I love doing, and it's something that I do better because I have ADHD, because my brain is non-neurotypical. I have the ability to sit for 4 hours and weave worlds and create things out of nothing and engage with people in a way that I have a lot of trouble doing outside of structured role play. I have a lot of trouble with small talk. I have a lot of trouble with a lot of things that neurotypical people don't. Um, but through play and collaborative storytelling, I'm able to speak freely and openly and honestly in a way that I just couldn't before. Um, there are so so many problems kind of across the board um, for the queer community, for the neurodivergent community, for mental health in this country and around the world. It just in general, truly. The human condition is never an easy one. And for some people, it is so much harder. And I think that on the one hand, it, not to put a weird spin on it, but conflict builds character, you know, which is true, but I'm done building character, I think. I'm ready to stop building character for a little bit. Um, it is a very hard world that we live in, and it's very hard to be a human being sometimes, a lot of the time. The ability to accept things about yourself that are true with the full knowledge that it will make your life a bit harder is an astonishing thing. And I think to some degree, there's also the idea that a lot of people just don't have a choice in it, especially for neurodivergent people who are visibly neurodivergent. Um, they don't get the luxury of that choice. Um, and the same for queer people. There's a lot of queer people for whom the gender dysphoria and the living their life in a way that is societally acceptable is killing them. I have often heard it said that there are two types of queer people in the closet. There are those that come out of the closet, and there are those that become statistics. And for myself, that has rung just incredibly true for myself and for a lot of the people that I know. The question of, if you had to hide it all again, would you or could you? And a lot of the time it comes back to I couldn't. It's not even that if I could make the choice to pretend to be neurotypical, to sit straight and not, move or shake or stim in any way, sit in class and be the person that my parents and society have said that I'm supposed to be. It's not even that I wouldn't put myself through that. It's I couldn't put myself through that again. That to live inauthentically is tantamount to dying. And I think that that is perhaps the other side of that overlap between uh, the neurodivergence and the queer community is, on the plus side, if you can accept yourself as one, you can accept yourself as the other. But if you are forced out as one, well, then maybe you can be forced out as the other as well. Kind of a in for a penny, in for a pound mentality, which is not as positive of a light to look at it in, but I think is still also very true to a lot of lived experience. Um, for me, I've talked about my neurodivergence. My queerness um, came in waves throughout my life. Um, I did a lot of theater, uh, did a lot of theater, and I was always, I'm going to be the straight boy that does theater. Ha ha ha. Um, but many most people know Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Not as many people know Monty Python's Flying Circus, which was a television sketch comedy show. In Flying Circus, which I watched a lot of that growing up, there's so much drag that happens. So many times where they would cross dress as British housewives and for the skit, and it was always played for a laugh. And but I remember as a child, any opportunity I could have to wear mom's fancy hat, or oh, we need to do a skit where someone wears a dress so that we can point and laugh. I'll wear the dress. That's fine. That's fine. I'll do that. And it wasn't until I met my partner and went through their transition with them that I was able to see how much happier they were when they could accept themselves. I met my partner, uh, who is our executive director, Axton Burton, uh, when they were still female presenting. And I went through with them uh, through their transition to Axton. And I know firsthand through myself and Axton's transition how life-changing and affirming it is to be the person that you are. And with that, and this was before I was diagnosed with ADHD, my queerness predates my understanding of my own neurodivergence. I knew I was depressed in middle school. I've known I've been depressed my whole life. Depression has walked with me constantly. Um, but understanding myself has been such an ongoing exploration and battle and joy. Um, working with Axton through that showed me that change is possible. And I have been privileged to know so many more trans people through their transitions from being someone else to being who they are. To tie an aspect of that back in my D&D, one of my players transitioned and was in the process of transitioning and decided to try out their new name in one of my games because they felt that it was a place where they could be supported. Where, you know what, we're already calling me a character's name. Can you also call me my new name? And one of the one of my issues when I was preparing for to talk about this, all of this, other than trying not to get emotional, um, is what is the end point here, James? You've been talking for half an hour. What is the point of queerness and mental health? What do I want you to take away from this? Um, we're underfunded. First off, Nami knows this. We need a lot more money. We need a lot more understanding. We need less stigma, and we need more community and acceptance across the board. Um, but I guess the thing that I'd want people to take away from what I have to say is it is possible to change, and it is possible to look at yourself, the ugly parts and the beautiful parts, and the parts that are beautiful that you call ugly, and to reevaluate yourself and change yourself into someone that you can be proud of. I am happier today than I have ever been in my life. And I'm still depressed. I still have depression. I still have anxiety. I still have a lot of trouble with disassociation and the parts of my ADHD that are very spicy. I still have trouble being completely comfortable in my body and with my queerness. But I am happier today, and I am surrounded by people who are happier today than they were before they could articulate who they were. The words are out there, and with the words comes community, comes understanding, comes people with shared experiences and with support. I am thrilled and privileged that I get to share my life with my partner, my time with my community, my DMing energy and my ADHD with my D&D pals. I I am incredibly blessed. And there is so much more to say, but I fear I've been rambly enough as it is. Um, there's a lot to say as well about underfunded communities and uh, immigrant communities. There's a lot to say about uh, how stigma is presented uh, across nations and cultures and religions and where it comes from and why it comes from. And I'm not qualified to speak to all that. I think that those are just larger conversations that need to be had. But if you are watching this, be kind to yourself first, be kind to others second, and then be kind to yourself again. Uh, I think that's my full shtick. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, James, for sharing your story with us tonight. I know that I personally resonated with a lot of the things that you shared. I am certain that people in our audience will feel the same. I'd love to open it up to questions. I have a few prepared questions as well to continue this conversation. But I'll also, well, people are welcome to place them in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute and share your question, you're more than welcome to do so.
I have a comment, which is more, I just want to thank James so much for sharing his story and all the incredible work that you and Axton and the team at Pride Across the Bridge does. We are fortunate to be here at the Together Center, and one of my favorite things is actually walking out of our office, and I'm typically here late at night, and seeing y'all play D&D is like so like heartwarming and awesome. Like I just love to see the community come together and y'all just like having a great time. So it's really cool, and I just want to thank you again for sharing your story and being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. One of the things that really stood out to me from what you were sharing, James, is related to the stigma that both the queer community and those, affected by mental health conditions face. And I'm curious if you'd be willing to share some of the things you've done or people in your community have done to help break down the stigma related to, either neurodivergence, your queer identity, or mental health, that you would like to share with folks as small or big ways that we can continue to break the stigma down so that it's not so hard for people to share about their identity.
Um, I think the biggest thing is to find community. Um, one of my unrelated to all this, one of my greatest fears is the news biospheres that we live in, is that politically we all live in very different realities where misinformation is so prevalent, and especially with the rise of AI is so it's very hard to fight stigma on a large level, but finding community is so important to be able to sit down with people and say, hey, I also have gone through that. It sucks, but I'm here to tell you there's light at the end of the tunnel, and come hang out with us and have snacks and talk about it. We're here to listen and support you. I think I think fighting the stigma on a societal level, that's a daunting task, but fighting it in our community, I think, is much more attainable and important. So we really try to make sure that the people that we can reach personally, we do. That we uh, make sure that people feel safe to be themselves uh, and bring their authentic self out with us.
Absolutely. Yes. Another piece from what you shared that really resonated with me is related to the aspect of joy and how we need to be collecting joy in all the ways that we can. So I'm curious for you, James, how has accepting both your diagnosis with either neurodivergence or mental health and your identity related to queerness brought joy into your life?
It has brought so much joy into my life. It brought joy into my life first with just changing my internal narrative. I I'm not sure if I should curse, but I my internal monologue for a lot of my life was just me screaming at myself. I hated myself for so much of my life, and it was with my diagnosis and therapy that I was able to really peel that apart and kind of pull that apart and say, well, why do you do that? And the reason is, well, if you hate yourself first, then it won't hurt as much when other people hate you. So you know that you deserve to be hated, so you should just get on that and get ahead of it. Shoot yourself before they can shoot you, um, which is not good. It's not healthy. It's not great. Accepting myself allowed me to change my internal dialogue and allowed me to be more open and honest with the people around me in a way that I was never able to be. I I learned very early on from church. I learned the lesson that I learned the most from church was how to look people in the eye, smile and talk to them, and then the moment they leave, turn to the other people around and say how much I hated that person. That was the thing that I learned the most at church, was how to lie to people's faces about how great they were and how much I loved them, and then the moment they left, how much I hated them. Um, and so I lived in this fear that that was that if my parents are talking that way about strangers, what are they saying about me? Um, this like Machiavellian intrigue and drama that happens in in church. Oh Lord, I hated church. But being able to accept myself, or because I learned that, I also learned how to. I learned to keep my cards very close to my chest, to not let people know too much about me. Because whatever people know about you, then they could use that. So don't let people know things about you, but being able to accept I have ADHD, I'm queer, and then presenting that publicly is such a relief to not feel like I need to hide all of myself all of the time. And I still I don't volunteer a lot of information. If people ask me questions, I answer them. But especially at work or in like casual public settings, I don't share a lot of myself, and a lot of that still comes back from that. I've got to keep myself safe because you never know what people are going to say when you're not there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, I think to maybe a question to close us out, James, if you could share a little bit about how people can get involved with Pride Across the Bridge, how people can hear about events. If I know you mentioned some upcoming events like Redmond Pride at the end of August. How can people find out about all the amazing work that y'all do over there?
We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We have a monthly newsletter that we send out. You can also find us at prideacrossthebridge.org. We have a beautiful website that features some of the artwork that Pride Across the Bridge has done. Um, we also have the Big Book of All Things Queer. I should have shouted that out earlier, which is a free online resource guide that you can find on our website, prideacrossthebridge.org. Um, we have a calendar of all of our upcoming events. We have a lot of smaller recurring events like the D&D groups. We have Beyond Binary Connections, which is a casual hangout meetup group. Queer Creative Connections, very similar, except you come and do art. We've got queer figure drawing classes. We've got a lot of really cool stuff happening that happens pretty frequently. And then we've got some slightly bigger events like the She's Gays and They's Oh My comedy show and the trans non-binary swim meetup. And then the big event is Redmond Pride at the end of August because Pride's all year long. But mostly Instagram, Facebook, and prideacrossthebridge.org.
Wonderful. Yes, I too agree. Pride is for all year. We love celebrating it in June, but really, Pride is for all year round. So, thank you again, James, for your time and for your story and sharing with us tonight. If any folks watching want to continue to be a part of the Evergreen Health Forum, we have them every month on the last Tuesday of every month from 7 to 8 p.m. And you can register to attend on our website at NAMI.org, NAMIeastside.org. And with that, I'll say thank you and good night and happy Pride.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you again, James.